Corey Lewandowski, noted author, Let Trump Be Trump, Trump's Enemies, New York Times bestseller. Currently, senior advisor, Trump Pence 2020, and he's joining us now. Hey, Corey, great to have you, man.
Good morning,
Good
Corey.
morning, John. Good morning, Martha, and congratulations on the new acquisition. You're getting bigger and bigger every day, which America needs to have people like you who continue to reinvest and have the opportunity to tell the truth. So to you and Ann and the entire family, congratulations
Woo-hoo!
and good luck this weekend in the baseball tournament. I hope you don't have to wear a mask while you're watching the game.
There's no mask. It's amazing. I was at the tournament last weekend.
John, just the catcher.
Just the catcher was a mask.
The catcher's going to wear his mask.
Virginia has completely busted out. They're defying the governor. They don't care what he says. I don't know if there's other states doing this, but, I mean, last weekend here, Corey, at this tournament, there were 3,000 people. There were 50 teams. I think 8 people had a mask on, no social distancing, people hugging each other, all the players high-fiving. Nothing was different, all in complete defiance of the governor's lockdown orders, phase 2 or whatever it is. All in defiance. Nothing happened. Nobody cared. It's over.
John, it's so strange because your governor has this affinity to masks, or as we call them, hoods sometimes, right? Yes. When he was in school. Remember when he wore the hood, or he didn't actually want to admit if he was the guy in the hood or the guy in blackface? And by the way, just a pass from the media now. They're saying he's such a great governor. The hypocrisy never ends in this country.
Well, he's a hostage of the far left wing and the far left in the Democratic Party because they allowed him to stay in power. They took him hostage, and he has to do whatever he says. It's sick. Corey, I'm going to talk about this rally coming up on Saturday. How do you get 1.1 million people to go online and request a ticket to a rally in Tulsa in an arena that seats under 20,000 people? How do you get 1.1 million people requesting tickets?
So awesome.
John, this is a testament to how many people want to come out and support the president for what he's been able to do for the American people. Look, we've seen some big rallies before. We've seen some, high RSVP numbers before, but nobody, and I mean nobody in the history of American politics or probably in the history of America at all, has ever seen anything like this. This is historic. When you've got a president who's going to a state like Oklahoma, which is not historically focused as we get into the last 20 weeks now of the election, to see presidential candidates coming through because we know it's going to be a reliably Republican state. We see the president going there on Saturday. The outpouring of support, which is obviously not just from the people of Oklahoma, but from around the country who are saying, we want the president back on the road. We want to come out and hear his message directly. This is what this is all about. The American people are ready to, as you said, John, to have our country open again and have the president out talking to them directly.
Corey, the jobs numbers in May were phenomenal, right? We talked about that last week, 2.5 million jobs created. Now the Democrats are in a dead ring panic, and they're afraid that we're going to get similar numbers in June, July, and August, and Trump is going to get reelected. So now their ploy, now their ruse is to not open up schools because they figure, well, if you don't open school, a lot of moms and dads can't go back to work, so that hurts the job numbers. It'll also hurt the economy because you're not buying sneakers and shoes and back-to-school supplies. Is their education being ripped out from under them for political gain?
Well, I think look, I really think that we have to look at the opportunity for children to go back to school in a very, very hard way. Don't forget, John, the retail numbers that were posted in May, a 17.7% increase in retail spending is the single largest spending increase in the history of our country. You couple that with the job numbers, with the professionals, and I use those terms in quotes, told us that we would lose 8 million jobs and we gained 2.5 million for a total net of 10 million jobs the experts are off by, John. Not one or two. 10 million they were off by, okay? These guys are so stupid they can't find their butt with both hands. So here's what we're doing now, John. We're saying to parents, hey, remote learning is a good thing. We're concerned about the coronavirus pandemic impacting your children. Let's look at the numbers. If you're under the age of 30, and I'm not trying to belittle these, I'm just trying to give you the facts. If you're under the age of 30, which I would think, at least in my household, all of the kids that go to school on a daily basis are under the age of 30, right?
Yes.
You know how many people have contracted and then died from the coronavirus under the age of 30 in the United States? Less than 100 people. I'm not belittling that number, but clearly children are the people who have the strongest immune systems by and large. They're the ones who are least at risk. But it's very easy for these Democrats to simply politicize their education. And look, John, I'll tell you this. In my family, we just got our report cards. My 4 kids all just get the report cards. My youngest, who was in the 3rd grade, just simply got a pass-fail.
Right.
And so obviously he passed the 3rd grade, he went on. But my daughter, who's going into her 8th grade year, and I feel terrible for the kids who are in 8th grade and seniors in high school and graduated from college because they couldn't do it with their colleagues and their friends and their classmates. She's as nervous as can be because now we're putting all of this pressure on students to learn remotely at home. And look, she got straight A's last year, and she put a lot of effort into it. I'm very proud of that fact. But if we're going to retool our entire education system, then the question is, why do you have to live in that school district if we're going to be remote learning? So, hey, maybe the best school district in the country is not in my hometown of New Hampshire. Maybe it's in XYZ town, right? If I'm going to remote learn, I want my kids in the best school district. Isn't that the case?
That makes perfect sense to me. If we're going to reimagine police security, we should reimagine education. And now we're distance learning. So why should you be stuck? Why should, in Richmond, where we are today, in my studio here, we're in studio, last year, 30% of Richmond high schoolers, get this, 30% dropped out, didn't graduate. We have a 70% graduation rate in Richmond. So if you're in Richmond and you can't go to school, why can't you do distance learning and go to, I don't know, Virginia Beach, where it's 98%?
Right. Or Beverly Hills, John. What does it matter, right? If you're distance learning, what does it matter if you want to go to Beverly Hills High School in California and you want to be part of that group of students? Because if that's what we're going to do, then let's really look at this. Let's stop being punitive against our students. And look, hey, my kids, we're fortunate. We've got a great school system. But let me tell you something. The other thing is this, John. 80% of the taxes in my little hometown of New Hampshire go to the schools. That means maintaining buildings and all these other things. Mm-hmm. Hey, if we don't need those things anymore, then guess what? I want a tax break, okay? Because I don't need a giant, colossal $100 million high school anymore that the school built 3 years ago.
Right.
I want my money back because the kids aren't using it. I want a discount. And guess what? The government doesn't like giving discounts, okay? The government doesn't like giving your money back. They're very good at taking your money, but not so good at giving it back. So if that's what we're going to do in this country, that's going to potentially, and we have to seriously look at this, potentially give people in the inner cities the opportunities to go to remote learning in places outside the inner city that they couldn't get into because of where their household is, right? It also means that we shouldn't be paying taxes on these places if we're not using them. And, John, let me just, and I know I'm on a little bit of a hot button on this thing, just remember, when where we are now in this world of defund the police, and your listeners know, as a former police officer, I am against this movement 100,000% with no equivocation. But just think what happens if students do go back to school and we end up in another situation like we did in Florida where there was a police officer there, but he refused to act when there was a gunman in the school. Now we're saying in some places we don't even want a student resource officer to be at the school full-time. God forbid something happens again, there will be another outcry. And so I think these people who are in the, this area in Seattle don't think through appropriately all that is entailed as they go and encourage the defunding of police.
Well, I don't know who they think is going to protect them in Minneapolis or Seattle. What happens when you call 911? I think I got the stats earlier last week that there were 250 million calls last year, 2019, to 911. Think about that, Corey. 250 million 911 calls. Who are they going to call? Social workers? I mean, you call 911 when somebody's breaking into your house.
Hey, Antifa, can you swing by when you guys get coordinated and swing by and see if you can help out? You know, my mother just had a heart attack. 911 isn't working, and so let's call Antifa. I mean, come on, this is outrageous. This is lunacy at its best. This is political correctness run amok. This is everything that Donald Trump ran against 4 years ago and is continuing to run against today. We are a civilized society. We're the greatest country in the world. We are a nation of law and order, and I think that's very important. And look, the media, the fact that they're giving this chop, as you will, so much attention is only fueling the flames. The fact that the city up in Seattle is negotiating, and I use that term loosely, with some of the leadership there to define the barriers, and now they're putting cement barriers in place to give these people legitimacy, is craziness. I mean, this is crazy town, John.
It's unbelievable what is going on, Corey. And you look at this, and then you look at the public polling, right? And you have to ask yourself, these polls can't be real. I mean, are people really going to vote to defund the police, put themselves at risk, tear down all of the statues, including Washington? Now we're tearing down Thomas Jefferson statues, Washington. There was somebody went on CNN the other day. They want to destroy Mount Rushmore. Where does this end, Corey?
Well, John, here's where it ends today, and you've seen this. I think it's Quaker Oats has 3 white children on their cereal box. They're saying that's racist. Take those people off. Right? That's what they said today. One of the well-known cereal brands has 3 white children on their cereal box, and has probably been there for 100 years. And they're saying, you must take those off. It's not right anymore. I mean, look, hey, I'm all about inclusion. I really am. But when we're ripping down statues of Christopher Columbus and Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, we're doing a disservice to future generations. We're doing a disservice because it's important to remember our founding fathers, what they went through, okay, the patriots that they were to take on the British, to literally lift their lives and their fortunes so that we would not be governed by a king back in 1776. And look, it was not an easy battle. George Washington didn't have this massive army that everyone just volunteered for. These were literally farmers and peasants who gathered, in some cases, pitchforks and anything they could find, rifles, to go and fight the British. And it took years. And that was part of our history. And we have to remember that history. We have to remember what Ronald Reagan said. Freedom is only one generation away. It's not passed in the bloodline. It's not how it works. We have to protect it. Every generation has to protect it. And we're going so far to the left that we're going to look back at this time in the year 2020 and in 30 years from now say, this is where it all went wrong. And this notion, John, and it drives me batty, that we can't continue to honor the flag, that it is, I heard this basketball coach, this NBA basketball coach who's probably making, millions and millions of dollars a year coaching kids who play a game, say that the flag is just a symbol, it doesn't mean anything. Hey, why don't you get your butt and go sign up like a guy by the name of Pat Tillman did, who was an NFL football player. He signed up and went out and gave his life for the privilege to honor that flag. And these hypocrites, John, drive me crazy. And the day that we stop honoring the flag is the day that I just don't know if this is the country that I can be in anymore.
Well, what they've said basically is the flag is just a piece of cloth that represented a country that was founded on looting and slave owners. And so it was not something to be honored. And so kneeling down or trampling on it or burning it was fine because it's not really something that we should be proud of. And that's what that basketball coach said. I think that's Popovich at San Antonio. The guy makes millions of dollars. He just hates America. When you start saying your flag is an empty symbol of looting, now you're basically debasing the whole reason for the country, right? And you undermine the founding fathers, and you say that they were not good people, and so now there's no reason to be like America's just a mass of land, right? No borders, right? Shouldn't have a border, shouldn't have a country. Now we're back to that again.
John, it's lawlessness is what it is, okay? They think it's racist to decide that the president wants to secure our border so we can know who's coming into the country. They think it's xenophobic to say, hey, if you're from certain countries like Syria and other terror-prone nations, we don't want you here unless you've gone through a thorough background check. Look, this is not the United States of you do whatever you want. There are laws, there are rules here, and we are the greatest country in the world, and the greatest country the world has ever seen for a reason. But this notion, if you are an outside observer and you're looking at this and you're saying, how is it possible that a group of basic hoodlums, protesters have taken over, marauders, whatever you want to call it, a number of city blocks in a major U.S. city. And now we're negotiating of how much room they can continue to have with complete lawlessness. How is it possible?
Unbelievable. It's like I'm living in the Twilight Zone, Corey, when I see what's happening there. And look, they've erected border walls. They have they're picking who enters into their designated zone. They've got armed guards. I mean, all the
AR-15s, the same AR-15s that they wanted us to ban.
That they want us to ban.
By the way, I just got to tell you this story, Corey, because you know my wife Ann. We had a debate. I don't know, about 2 months ago. We have a bunch of guns, and she was in favor of buying more when all this happened, so we did that. And I said, my son and I said to her, you know, we need to get an AR-15 because, you know, something happens. It's not to shoot a squirrel. We need to protect ourselves. My son's 16. You know him too. And Ann was like, I mean, she went nuts. She was, no, we're not getting an AR-15 in this house. No. And, you know, look, all the kids know, and I know after 30 years with her, you know, no means no. You know, she dies on every hill. It's like, okay, we all backed off. All right, Mom. All right, Ann. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Don't get upset. We're not going to get an AR-15. 2 weeks go by, all this other stuff happens, all right? 2 weeks go by, Saturday, she says to me, why don't you call Bob and be sure they don't run out of product, she said, and why don't you put a deposit on that AR-15 so we can pick it up next week and then get training on it. No, like in-between narrative, like I thought about it and maybe I'm wrong, I have to make another decision. Like it was adamant, no, you're not getting it. It's not coming to this house. 2 weeks after that, it's like, hey, go put a deposit on it with nothing in between. Now, what does that tell you right there?
John, what it tells you is and no, the media doesn't want to report this because it doesn't fit their narrative. What it tells you is suburban women who may sometimes not like the way Donald Trump speaks about things or the way he delivers his message or his brashness are law and order by and large. What it tells you is that women who have families want safety and security for their families, as do other women. But see, that narrative doesn't fit. What we always hear from the media, John, is that Donald Trump is losing educated white women because of his rhetoric. What they're not doing right now is you don't hear that from the media because when you go and poll this information about defunding the police, 58% of the U.S. population is against defunding police. When you go and you dive into those numbers, you see that educated suburban women, particularly those who are moms and have children, are saying, we don't want to defund the police. We want law and order. We want security and safety. We want to make sure the businesses that these women have started and worked so hard for are protected. And I think your wife, and I'm not trying to lump her into this, is an explicit example of this. Because what she is seeing and what others are seeing around this country is bedlam, is chaos. And her number one priority, like my number one priority and yours and hopefully every other parent out there, is the safety and security of your family first and foremost. And look, John, hey, I've never hidden the fact that I'm a gun guy. You know, I built a house around a gun safe, right? That's what I did, and I've never hidden that fact. And, hey, you know, I hope nothing ever transpires that would cause me to need to use those weapons in the safety and security of my family. But there is no equivocation on my part. If it's me or a bad guy, I know I'm picking my family every time, and that's how it is. And I think your wife and others are saying, we don't know how far this bedlam, this craziness is going with people who are, you know, ripping down statues, destroying businesses, and destroying our communities. And when do they march to your house? When do they come through your neighborhood? I don't know, but I can tell you my little neighborhood here in New Hampshire had staged a series of National Guard members last week for concern and fear that they were going to start marching through here. And the governor did a fine job of responding. But that doesn't mean you don't want to be personally prepared, and I think your wife understands that.
Corey Lewandowski, I'm just about out of time. Kiera says I got to go, but I just got to ask you this one question. How do we win in November?
It's very simple. We need Joe Biden to be out talking to the American people. We need to remind everybody that Joe Biden is the nominee. This election is as much about Joe Biden as it is Donald Trump. This is as much of a dichotomy in the election as it was in 2016. Joe Biden is the swamp. Everybody knows that. 50 years in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump is still the outsider just because he's only been there for 4 years. And the real question is, do we want to move forward and bring our economy back and allow safety and security, or do we want to pander to the left, allow Joe Biden to be influenced and overseen by those who believe the Green New Deal is not enough? And so it's really a question of which direction you want to take the country. Unlike Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, who many could argue were, very similar on policy issues, these two people, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, could not be further apart. And this election is about that.
And you have called for a number of debates, right? You want 6 debates.
I do. I want them starting right at Labor Day. I think it will continue to highlight the differences between these candidates. It will give the American people the chance, because we know Joe Biden has been hiding in his basement. He has to come out. He has to answer questions. He has to do interviews. And he has to stand there on the debate stage and articulate to the American people how he allows people, where he raises money for people who are supporting the Green New Deal, the biggest boondoggle in American history, how he will cut our U.S. military greater than the president, even increase our budget, how he will continue to make us a laughingstock on the world stage by not forcing our allies to pay their fair share at NATO. This is a change election. 4 years ago, the candidates were very different. They are as different today as they were 4 years ago. That wasn't the case when John McCain ran against Barack Obama, and it wasn't the case when Mitt Romney ran against Barack Obama. It is the case today, and the American people have to decide. Do they want law and order and economic security, or do they want to go back to the way it was, open borders, don't care about the economy, don't care about offshoring jobs, we're going to kiss China's butt every day, and that's the future of our country. That's what's at stake in this election.
John Fredericks Radio Network. I want to thank Corey Lewandowski
Thank you,
for
Corey.
being with us. Corey, thank you so much. Thanks for everything, and thanks for your time. Trump, Let Trump Beat Trump, Trump's Enemies. Get on Amazon, your favorite bookstore. New York Times bestseller. Now a must-read more than ever. Thank you, Corey.